So Sunday, the 1st of March, yesterday Israel and the US started their strikes against Iran. Finally, Persians are celebrating everywhere. They eliminated the Israeli army. The IDF already eliminated also Ayatollah Khamenei and higher officials. So they're taking out one by one the Iranian regime. And but I'm not a news channel because also so much is happening and so fast. You have to follow it yourself. So every video would be, I can't be updated. I mean, I can be updated, but I can't make videos that are updated. Yeah. So you have to follow it yourself on Twitter. And Twitter, the Persians themselves, they are on Facebook mainly, and the Americans, the Arabs, and the Israelis are on Twitter. So you have to follow on both channels to know what's going on. And so far, the Iranian regime has attacked also yesterday Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Bahrain, Qatar, Kuwait, Israel, Iraq, and something else. Jordan, and only civilian targets. So the Israelis live in bunkers. Again, they have their parties in the bunkers. But I want to make a video about the why. And why do certain people condemn the strikes? Like Guterres, or Mandani, or Germany, or Sanchez, or Kamala Harris. I mean, obviously it's clear because they're left-wing and they support terrorism. And therefore the Ayatollah regime. I mean, that's why I don't really understand why the Iranian regime also strikes Qatar, because they're actually on the same side, means on the side of terrorism, but also of course, the Palestinians, also the terrorist leadership, and on Israeli territory, they also condemn the strikes against Iran. Why? Because they would lose a lot of support, because the Iranian regime is the main supporter of Hamas, Islamic Jihad, PLO, and so forth. I mean, weapon suppliers, but also Hezbollah, of course. And of course, Turkey, Erdogan also condemned the strikes. So it's quite obvious who is who in history, and you don't need, there are no surprises, right? Wait a minute. Why this regime also hits Muslim? I mean, Israel is also a Muslim-inhabited country, because 20% of the Israeli population is Arab. Not all of them Muslims, of course, also some Christian and some Drusim. But I mean, here I have a post from Israel, and it reads from Uro Korlianchik. The Iranians just hit the Palestinian village of Smyrna in West Samaria. So they actually also hit their allies, and doesn't make much sense if you look at it. It sounds a bit unhinged. And by the way, this they do the same like this terrorists called Palestinians. They hit this girls' school in Teheran, and claimed it were the Israelis. It were not the Israelis. This girls' school was hit by the Iranian regime, and they published it. An Iranian channel published it themselves. It's just this: Israelis are child killers. They are not. I mean, depends what you call a child, of course. Yes. So many also talked about, especially ones who are actually pro-terrorism, like Musab Hassan Youssef, claimed that Iran will be a failed state or a chaos, political chaos like Iraq. Of course, they do have Reza Pahlavi, and are talking about why they want Reza Pahlavi soon. But they also have what was also new for me, a National Council of Resistance of Iran. So they actually have a national council, an opposition, a political opposition in Iran, and they announce, I read the post, Mariam Riyavi, the president-elect of the National Council of Resistance of Iran, a coalition of democratic Iranian opposition, today announced the formation of a provisional government by the NCRI to transfer sovereignty to the people of Iran and establish a democratic republic based on a 10-point plan, as war with the United States and Israel intensified today. So the Iranians are organized and educated people. This is not Iraq and this is not Syria. And now I want to talk about the background of what is going on, and it should be a warning. I have the most of the information from the Iranian activist Noah Berg. I think she lives in Canada. I'm not sure. I'm not sure where she lives. So because everyone hears that the Americans, Jimmy Carter, the American president, I think he was from the Democrats, of course, installed the mullahs. So I tried to find out what is behind it. So it's not that easy. Especially, the Americans didn't install socialist, means left-wing ideologies in Iran. And I've met people who grew up in Iran, also old people, Jewish people who live now in Israel. And so at the time of the last Shah, so Reza Pahlavi's father, was a good time for the Persians. And he was elected by the parliament. He was not installed by the British or by somebody else. He was an elected Shah. And he westernized and modernized the country, or they claimed it was westernization, but in fact it's just a development to be modern. But why is this a warning? And many Iranian activists say, please West, be warned. But actually Israel should be a warning to you already. Because I've spoken to it a lot of times, the alliance between Islam and National Socialism. This is what the Israelis are still suffering from. That's why there is a war. And that's why this terrorist organization called Palestinians are trying genocide again and again. This is from National Socialism, the alliance of National Socialism and Islam. And National Socialism is a radical form of socialism. It is a left-wing ideologies. Don't fall for historical lies. Fascism is a right-wing ideology called like that because of Mussolini's movement, and Mussolini's party was called in Italian fascio, which means union. That was the name of Mussolini's party, and Mussolini's party and political movement, also wrong by the way, was a radical nationalist movement. But the ideology is completely something else than National Socialism, communism, or other form of socialism, but that you also find in green parties. And now forget green. Now we talk about Iran, and in the Islamic world, green stands for Islam. Okay. So don't mix it up now. So, because many people think the problems for the Iranian people started with the revolution of 1979. This is not true. The story of this red-green alliance, so Islam and left wings, started earlier in Iran, and I learned it also. Yeah, I also didn't know. Red-green means far left with Islam. But I have to say to Iranian activists, a religion doesn't mean right-wing. The mullahs were not right-wing, and they are also still not right-wing. This is actually just a religious fanatics that fits well to socialist ideologies. The funny thing is, when you know about the development of or the history of political ideologies in Europe, then you wonder about this alliance, even now as in Europe, because the left-wing ideologies, they claim to be non-religious and anti-religious. That means they usually, because it developed in Europe, they claim to be non-Christian, of course, but they're in general also against other religions. So the alliance is actually inexplicable. It doesn't make much sense. So they also in the beginning of the socialist movements, don't care if you call it communist or whatever, or socialist, and the end of the 19th century in Europe, they all claimed to have nothing to do, especially with Christianity. Some of them were also Jewish, blinded, and but the most, of course, were Christians, the vast majority. And they even used the sentence of Friedrich Nietzsche, the German philosopher, God is dead. But Friedrich Nietzsche meant something completely different with that. Friedrich Nietzsche meant with this sentence, but of course socialists are not educated and don't read a book on philosophy. Friedrich Nietzsche criticized the European societies in the 19th century, especially humanism, that put humans in the center of the universe and placed the humans in a position of God. And that means that humans don't understand there is something that is holy, that is something above you. You can't do everything. And this is actually what you see also with Islam. These people scream Allah Akbar, and then they rape, and then they try to commit a genocide on Jews, or they hit women, or they beat women and children, and do sex slavery and all this stuff, or even torture animals for fun. These are people who are not religious, because they invent a god for their crimes. And this is, of course, they are not focused on something holy. They are focused on their bad, on themselves. This is not focused on something that you put above you to become a better person and that limits your actions. They invent a god and call him Allah to commit crimes. Very convenient, right? But let's talk about Iran. Yeah. So Reza Pahlavi's father was elected as Shah. So, but let's first, how did a left-wing ideology even enter Iran? That's a good question, right? Because Iran is a bit far away from Europe. And I learned it, and it's, of course, from the Soviets. Soviet Union. Yeah? From Soviet Union, it entered also China, Korea. So now we have North Korea and South Korea. And this is Soviet Union, and that's why China and Russia still cling to their allies. But what did the Soviets do? The Soviets entered Iran in the early 1920s and annexed a northern part of Iran and turned it to a socialist state. It was called the Persian Soviet Socialist Republic of the 1920s. And of course it failed because communism fails. It fails. Always. Except when you have a tiny community like a kibbutz, and people live like that voluntarily, but you can't force anybody to live like that. And then it failed, and this socialist, this left-wing ideology went underground and infected Iranian textbooks, in schools and in universities, and the academic life, education, and the intellectual elite. Exactly like in Europe and in Canada, US, and Australia. Exactly the same. I grew up in Europe and I know about it. It's exactly the same. But in fact, of course, somebody who is infected by an ideology is not an elite, because your mind is clouded. You're not intellectual. I mean, for me, when somebody says to me, "Oh, you're intellectual," I say no, because this is a swear word for me. Intelligent, yes, but intellectual, no. These are the universities and the school systems, also in Europe, are completely infected. And this is exactly what happened in Iran, starting in the 1920s. And this ideology, we are going back to Iran, this ideology taught these left-wing intellectuals that the West is their enemy. And it was their duty to fight Western imperialism. But there is no Western imperialism. It's nonsense. Do you know why the Soviet Union, in the beginning of in 1948, when Israel became independent, the left-wing ideologies in left-wing countries, also like especially the Soviet Union, were completely pro-Israel because of the kibbutzim. It was a complete communist idea, the kibbutzim, but of course voluntary. And they turned around when, after being attacked by Arab countries, and Arab countries attacked and attacked and attacked and attacked and attacked and attacked, and then there was the 6 Days War in 1967, and Israel won. Oh, bad, Israel wins, right? We are back at Christian and Muslim supersession. Watch this video. And so the bad Jews can't win, right? And then suddenly Israel was interpreted as a Western occupation army. But nobody said that, for example, Jordan was a Western right-wing occupation army when they occupied Israeli territory from 1948 to 1967. It was not occupational and colonizer. That's the logic of the left wing. Yeah. So, but that sounds all familiar, right? You have that all over and over and over again. And people with an ideology refuse to learn. That's it. what in fact this left-wing, we are back in Iran, what in fact this Iranian left-wing pseudo-intellectuals wanted, what they are doing, they turned Iran in a launchpad for communist dreams. That's what they wanted to do. A huge country like Iran, they wanted to turn into a communist country. Yeah, Soviet Union was even bigger, and they did. Yeah, they turned the Russian Empire into a communist nightmare for the people. If you have ever talked to people who grew up in the Soviet Union or in other communistic countries, they tell you the most terrible things. Even Lenin started the gulags. It was not Stalin, it was Lenin. It was just killing. And this is what happened later to the Iranians. And we are still not in 1979. In the 1960s, were the turning point. The Shah, who was elected by the parliament, introduced the White Revolution. He called it White Revolution. It was very good for the country because it modernized. It was a modernization project. It was not a westernization project. It was a modernization project. And this time, in Iran, it was ruled by Shia Islam. For example, religious minorities had absolutely zero rights. There's a very nice book. It's called Esther's Children, a history of Iranian Jewry. There you can read the whole history of Jews in Iran. For example, many people like, for me, Oloy al-Sharif is quite a clown, yeah? He talks a lot of nonsense because he doesn't know Jewish history in Iran. Jewish history in Iran, from the time Iran was occupied by Arabs and was forced into Islam, became a nightmare. Yeah. And you can read it in this book, Esther's Children. And also Baha'i. The Baha'i are also suppressed now in Iran. They have absolutely zero rights, but before that, under the last Shah, it was, of course. So they got civil rights, so the Mandaeans and the Christians. So, and it was in general a modernization project, especially also for the women's rights. And women's education, so girls' education, and it was industrial expansion and land reform. So he did only good things to the country, which was supported, by the way, by the Iranian people by a referendum. The lie that the last Shah was a dictator was put out by the left wing and the mullahs. Yeah, it was. And I also spoke with people who lived in Iran during the time of the Shah. I mean, they are very old. I met them in Israel for my project, and they said, all of them said it was wonderful. It was a wonderful time, and they actually loved it more than when they moved to Israel. They found it quite a shithole. They loved Iran. And for them, Israel was actually not so good to live there. Yeah? For them, Iran was kind of a holy place. Yeah? And but this modernization of the last Shah was rejected by the Red Green Alliance because they called it westernization, and that was the beginning when they joined forces. The left wing and the Muslims, and joined forces and set fire on the whole country. Like, for example, this Rex Cinema terror attack, because they said, oh no, cinema, this is a westernization, you're not allowed to go to cinema and watch a movie. No, this is westernization. I mean, so. And this alliance, this Red-Green Alliance, in fact, eventually led to the revolution of 1979. And I spoke to people whose parents fought in this revolution of the side of the left wing. These were the first ones, and the leader of this revolution was Ayatollah Khamenei, who also borrowed the left-wing language before they made the revolution to convince also the left-wing, that he is also left-wing. So he borrowed this left-wing language, like promising. And now listen to it. You will find Madani's words also in it, and all left-wing people, right? Free water, free education, free housing, free transportation. Whoop. And then you found out that there is nothing such as a thing like everything free, right? And also the citizens of New York also found out, because it's always a lie. There's nothing for free. And when you read, and then it turned into a hell for women. You can read the novel Reading Lolita in Teheran by Azar Nafisi. She took part in the revolution of the side of the socialists. She was a professor for English literature at the University of Teheran. No, of course, all the women suddenly ended up in prison, raped. And the hell for women started immediately. And also the people who had their parents in the revolution on the side of the left wings, they all told me that executed. They were the first people who were executed by the Ayatollahs, the left wing, who joined forces with the Mullahs. These were the first ones to be executed as soon as the Mullahs were in power. And they immediately turned it into hell for everybody. Lynching, raping, torturing in prison. Women disappeared, especially women disappeared in prison. And the Baha'i couldn't claim that they are the people of the book, means the Quran. I mean, also a weird pseudo-religion that says only people who are mentioned in our holy book are allowed to live. What? If we Jews would do that, nobody would be allowed to live. What kind of nonsense is that? We are all humans. And we have the same rights. And Baha'i many of the Baha'i fled from Iran. Like, for example, in Israel, you have the wonderful Baha'i gardens in Haifa. Whoever wants to visit Israel. Israel, the airspace is now closed. You can't enter anymore at the moment. But also the airspace in the UAE is closed. And Saudi Arabia, whatever, I don't know. You have to check for yourself if you want to go to any of these countries. Actually, I would love to go to Israel right now, but I can't. Now it's impossible. But why do the Iranians, or have the Iranians shouting the whole time now? To pay attention to why they shouted. They shout, "This is the last battle, then Pahlavi will return." It's not that they want necessarily, maybe some of them do, that they want a monarchy, but they know that they will need to do a referendum. That's also what Pahlavi himself said, there will be a referendum. What they actually want, a democracy or a parliamentarian monarchy, whatever you want. But first, before they move on politically, they have to correct the past. And now I want to talk a bit about what happened and why did Jimmy Carter, by the way also the French, supported the installation of the Ayatollahs. Because it's even now it's not fully understandable for me, and I didn't find that much information. It's quite weird. I read now, it's from The Guardian, but it's older, so not Qatar paid. There's a classified 1980 CIA analyzer titled Islam in Iran, published by the BSC, and it's from 1963. So, in November, I read the original. In November 1963, Ayatollah Khomeini sent a message to the United States government through High Mirza Khalid Kamari, a professor of the theological faculty of Teheran University and an Iranian politician close to oppositionist religious groups. So, opposition to the Shah. Yeah. So he was from the Ayatollah group, actually. Khomeini explained that he was not opposed to American interests in Iran. On the contrary, he thought the American presence was necessary as a counterbalance to Soviet and possible British influence. Such a liar, right? It's just lying. Khomeini also explained his belief in close cooperation between Islam and other world religions, particularly Christendom. It's written here Christendom, not Christianity. This is interesting, right? Of course, this was a lie. And in this article, I also quote now. And another message sent via a US emissary, written in the same month. He attempted to assuage American fears that the economic interests would be affected by a change of power in Iran. Quote from Khomeini. Yeah? There should be no fear about oil. It is not true that we wouldn't sell to the US. Another quote by Khomeini in a message to the US. It is advisable that you recommend to the army not to follow Shah's Prime Minister Shapur Bakhtiar. Khomeini said in one message, according to the BBC, you will see we are not in any particular animosity with the Americans. Then there came the hostage crisis. In November 1979, a group of students stormed the US embassy and took 52 diplomats hostage for 444 days, which is known as the hostage crisis. But honestly, it doesn't matter how many documents I read, I don't fully understand his support. Of course, Jimmy Carter was from the Democrats. Yeah, he was from the Democratic Party, so I just wanted to confirm it. And you see also now the Democrats are on the side of Islamists and of all kind of... the history of the Democratic Party and the Republican Party is so when, for example, black people say, "Oh, we vote for the Democrats because they're against racism." This is not true. The Democratic Party has this history in the thousand states that still maintained slavery. When in the northern, the Republican Party has its origin in northern states that were against slavery, and these southern states in the U.S. The Civil War was April 1861 to May 1865. They split off from the northern state to preserve slavery. This is where the Democratic Party comes from. And the Republican Party developed from the beginning were against slavery and racism, of course. So even the history of the Democrats is racist and pro-oppression of people, and not the Republican Party. But you see also the left wings love to lie. So this is a bit in the background, and this is also why you see all these left-wing politicians in Germany or in Spain or in France or in the US or in Turkey pro-Islamism. And there's also China. Yeah? I mean, no mentally healthy human being is anti-Semitic, hates Yesidim, hates Iranians, hates Christians, or women, and want to suppress people. This is not what it is done. For somebody who considers himself human first. And the unholy alliance of the left and Islam this is the story of the terrorism against Israel. This is the story also of Islamism. It is the story also of anti-Semitism. Learn from, not only from history, but also learn from what is happening now. And please pray for the Israeli army, for the soldiers. Pray also for the state of Israel. And I don't know how many soldiers, American soldiers, are really involved. For Israel, this is the biggest military action ever. They have 200. I think it's 500 fighter jets. So it's really the biggest air force action in Israel's history. I also found something quite funny from Qatar. I mean, of course, they are never on the side of Israel, even if it helps them. Qatar strongly condemns targeting its territory and sisterly states, affirms its right to respond. I wonder also if the UAE will respond, and if also Saudi Arabia will join the fund. But let's see if Qatar will join the side. I mean, when you see, for example, the interesting thing, the whole thing's now the war started with October 7th, 23. The concept was a bit bad, right? The Islamists tried to do a genocide on the Israelis. They didn't quite work out. I mean, it was the heaviest attack on Jewish life since the Shoah, and the war is completely justified. And also taking out the terrorist infrastructure, and I was still against the Board of Peace, and I say that also to you, Donald Trump, this is a wrong action. You undermine Israeli sovereignty. And this is not fighting terrorism, and I also explained it many times and in many videos. The only solution for terrorism against Israel is to expel the terrorists who were placed there by the whole Islamic world, not only the Arab world, but the whole Islamic world. And this is the only solution you have, because these are professional terrorists, and that's all what they do. And that's how they educate the children. They get children for terrorism. this is not the normal, let's say, motive of getting children. And so that means send them back to where they're from. When Muslim states say, yeah, but you have to ask us first, and I say, listen, you also didn't ask the Israelis if they wanted the people there. Yeah, I mean, this is ridiculous. Yeah. So, but in general, this action now is wrong, and I say that also to Amjad Taha. I was wrong about that, and that I never thought that America will join Israel to attack Iran. Okay, I was wrong. Can happen, but I'm happy that I'm wrong, by the way. And it's quite interesting, because yesterday was Shabbat, so I was in synagogue. My cell phone was switched off, and then somebody told me, Israel, I read it this morning on Facebook, Israel attacked Iran. I said, no, finally, that's good. And immediately started to pray for the Israeli army, and then waiting for Shabbat to end, and then get on Twitter, and Twitter didn't let me enter my account. And so I have another account now, so now I have two. And okay, so I found out what was going on. And the concept of also attacking Islamic countries is, except Turkey, of course, they don't attack their ally in crime, Turkey, with Erdogan, their best friend. But it's funny that yesterday was Shabbat Sarshar, when we read about Amalek, and so this is we choose, always say, listen, do you want to join the club of our enemies who disappeared from planet Earth? It happened to all the enemies of Israel. You can join the club, or you can join us. You have a choice. The choice is yours. And but of course, in a few days we celebrate Purim, and there are already jokes about it. Which dessert shall we call after Khamenei? Now, I say Khamenei buns, but you can come up with better ideas. Everything else. No, Israelis are not child killers, and also Iran didn't hit anything in Israel. They attack Israel, but there is an Iron Dome and an army and an air force. So they hit several targets in the UAE, also in Dubai and in Abu Dhabi and in Bahrain. Only civilian targets, and I don't know what they try to gain by it, because that will just show certain Arabic countries, but also Jordan, that an alliance with Israel is actually much better than an alliance with terrorists. I mean, I could have told you before, but you usually don't want to listen. And it's also not true that the Iranian terror regime hit U.S. military bases in the UAE. I think there is not even one, or in Qatar, or in Saudi Arabia. Also not in Jordan. That were only civilian targets. And of course, the people there are not used to it. The Israelis are used to it and are much more prepared for it, and sit there from baby to great grandmother and the dogs in the bunkers, and just sing and dance and pray. But of course, for Arabs, citizens of Arabic countries, this is something new. But you have to fight through. The best thing is that you can do is to join Israel and stop your idiotic anti-Semitism and hate. Amen. And there's also an Iranian who said we will make Purim as a general holiday in Iran. I said, it's a good idea. I mean, Purim is in general a very fun holiday, but doesn't work for Muslims, by the way, because in Purim you have to get so drunk that you can't pronounce the difference between blessed is Mordechai and cursed is Houman, just say. Because on Purim we get drunk like hell. I've never managed because I don't drink much alcohol. So have a nice day, and thanks to the Israelis, thanks to the Emiratis, thanks to the Saudis. Qatar I have no patience with, and also good luck to the Jordanians and Bahrain, of course, and Persians. Dear Iranians, bring the regime down. The Israelis and the Americans help you now. Bye.